Hello everybody, I'm back with What Else I Saw in June Part 2, picking up where we left off and starting again with a Western. Movie number 10 is 1950's The Gunfighter, a Western drama in which Gregory Peck stars as Jimmy Ringo, fastest gun in the West with 12 men dead at his hand. But Ringo doesn't want to be known as a fearsome killer. He tries to keep a low profile, but people always seem to recognize him. Now, with 3 men on his tail who want justice for their brother, who quite frankly got himself killed by being an idiot, Ringo sets out to pay a visit to a woman from his past before these guys catch up to him. His presence causes a big stir in a small town, which is more than a little humorous. A good guy and a legend to some, and a villainous outlaw to others. There's only so much time before they try to kick him out, but he won't go until he's seen this woman. This is a solid film directed by Henry King. The story's well acted and neatly told, with strong dynamics between the characters. Though I think we all hoped for a different resolution, my parents and I enjoyed it. It's got a little of everything. Movie number 11, and how many people are thrown off that I didn't start at number 1? I know I am, and I put this together. Movie number 11 is a 2015 film set in 1950s Australia, The Dressmaker, in which Kate Winslet plays a haute couture dressmaker who returns with flair to the small outback town that cast her out years ago in order to shake things up and get revenge on her enemies. This quirky film has a lot of humor, some of it obvious, some of it so subtle you might miss it, but it's a very dark comedy with some heavy twists and character decisions I wasn't 100% on board with. There's some mature content, and it's a tragic story too, so I don't know exactly what category it's supposed to fall into. Tragic comedy? It's tough to say how much I liked the movie, since a lot of the time I was feeling surprised, amused, and disturbed all at once. I also had some trouble buying that Winslet, here age 40, and Liam Hemsworth, then 26, were supposed to be around the same age. Of course, Winslet hasn't aged much in 20 years, so I guess it's okay. There's a great performance from Judy Davis as Winslet's eccentric mother. Hugo Weaving has a memorable role, and the costumes, designed by Margot Wilson and Marion Boyce, hello, obviously, those were something else, especially set against this dusty, craggy Australian backdrop. Movie number 12, goodness me, is a new movie, sort of. It actually came out late in December of 2019, but it got its wide release on Amazon Prime just last month. 7500, a tense film about a German airplane being hijacked. About 99% of it is set in the cockpit, where American co-pilot Joseph Gordon-Levitt must fight off terrorists in an effort to maintain control of the plane. It's important to note that this is not an action film, and arguably it's not a thriller either, if using the term thriller is going to give you false expectations. But I described it a second ago as tense, and I'm going to stick by that. It's quiet, with a lot of flight procedure and most of the activity occurring off-screen. Our perspective is limited, and events feel like they occur in real time. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's mild-mannered co-pilot has been trained for this scenario, of course, but nothing can prepare him for the horrible decisions he's required to make. There are some heartbreaking moments here that made it a little tough going. It's definitely not a feel-good film, but we all thought it was good nonetheless. Movie number 13 is 1950's Gun Crazy, a fast-paced noir where John Dahl plays a man with a lifelong gun obsession who falls for a sharpshooter played by Peggy Cummins. Sparks fly when they meet at a carnival, and he bests her in a shooting competition. They eventually marry, and he learns she's got a hunger for the high life. When they find themselves low on cash, he reluctantly agrees to go on a crime spree at her urging. But he refuses to kill, while she doesn't really have an issue with it. An unwilling participant, he goes along out of love for her, another well-meaning innocent caught in the web of an insatiable femme fatale. There is definitely sexual tension here, but it's also a romantic story. Take the scene where they've agreed to separate after a holdup and drive off in opposite directions, only to stop and turn around, meeting each other halfway and embracing before driving off together. There's no doubt they love each other, but that twisted devotion makes the situation more complicated. The The film's a morality tale at its core, but it doesn't feel like it. Gun Crazy has been surging in popularity lately, thanks in large part to its realism and its great photography, including the placement of the camera in the back seat of the car so they could film a hold-up through the windshield and windows rather than using a rear projection as was the norm. This, coupled with supposedly improvised dialogue, made getaways much more exciting and genuine. I've been hearing about this movie from the film noir crowd for several years. Having watched it finally, I'd say it deserves the hype. Speaking of hype, movie number 14 is a popular one from last year that I've been wanting to see, Knives Out, a modern whodunit in which a wealthy, best-selling murder mystery novelist, played by Christopher Plummer, is found dead of apparent but dubious suicide. A renowned detective, played by Daniel Craig, is anonymously invited to investigate the death, and each member of the deceased's family, greedy little beasts each one of them, becomes a suspect. Hands down, Daniel Craig was the best part. I thoroughly enjoyed all the quirky aspects of his character, a southern gentleman who develops a bond with the film's young protagonist, the deceased's caretaker, played by Ana de Armas. The Who's Who ensemble cast is one of many nods to the classic Agatha Christie adaptations of the past. It's a movie that requires you to pay attention both to what you see and what you hear, and like most whodunits, it bends your train of thought in the third act. It was engagingly filmed by Rian Johnson, who also wrote the screenplay, and who apparently wasn't so bothered by the hatred of rabid Star Wars fans that he couldn't deliver a hit. The movie has a lot of satisfying little surprises, a nice example of Chekhov's gun, picturesque location shooting, and fun, exaggerated characters. I only wish he hadn't made the movie longer with irritating political discussion. I'm trying to relax and enjoy a movie. I don't want to hear about politics. Other than that, it was great. Movie number 15 is a crime drama from 1948, Raw Deal, and this summary might get a bit confusing, so hold on. Dennis O'Keefe is serving time for a crime Raymond Burr committed. Burr sends O'Keefe's lady friend, Claire Trevor, to bust him out of jail, not telling her that he hopes O'Keefe will be killed on the run so he'll no longer pose a threat to him. But the primary focus is on a love triangle that develops between O'Keefe and the two women he's brought on the lam. Claire Trevor as the sort of girlfriend who's been hanging around for years and would do anything for him, and Marcia Hunt as the legal secretary who took an interest in his case and wanted to help get him out on parole. Her influence causes O'Keefe to wonder if immediate freedom at any cost is as good as freedom in due time with a clear conscience. The love triangle is pretty wonky. I'd go into detail, but it would get too complicated. What it boils down to is that sometimes a person doesn't seem interested until suddenly he or she is. And honestly, I struggle to see why either of these women would be in love with O'Keefe's character. But anyway, this film, directed by Anthony Mann, who's famous for his noirish westerns, features some great cinematography. The story might have been a little hit and miss sometimes, but it was well acted and it looks great. Raymond Burr caught my attention. I've seen him play the bad guy plenty of times, but he makes an impression here, often shot from below to accentuate his broad shoulders, his bulk, his dark expression. There are a few surprisingly violent moments, including a scene where Burr throws a flaming pot on his floozy girlfriend and she screams in terror and pain. The shock and brutality of it made it particularly memorable. Movie number 16 is 1974's Juggernaut, in which 7 bombs are placed on a British luxury liner carrying 1,200 passengers. The man who made them demands a ransom in exchange for instructions on how to defuse them. If he doesn't get that ransom, the ship will explode at dawn. Richard Harris leads a team of bomb disposal experts onto the ship, while Scotland Yard hunts for the bomber. It sounds good, but I didn't care for it. The big cast includes the aforementioned Richard Harris, who doesn't do anything for me, young Anthony Hopkins and young Ian Holm, Omar Sharif as the captain, Shirley Knight as his girlfriend? Their relationship is undefined. Roy Kinnear as the cruise employee in charge of entertainment, who's playing a buffoon half the time, ended up being the only truly likable, developed character. The plot was engaging enough, and it's fine that they favored realism over sensationalism, But so many characters were featured who added nothing to the story or had some significance that the movie didn't bother to explain. The wooden dialogue didn't help the performances, and there was a dearth of honest emotion from all but a few cast members, including Ian Holm, who succeeded in making his character compelling even though the part was underdeveloped. The final sequence was tense, but that didn't override the feeling that the film had unresolved storylines and unrealized potential. It was an okay movie to watch with my dad on a Saturday night, but he and I both found it mediocre. Movie number 17 is 2014's 10.0 Earthquake, which was ridiculous, but my mom's always on board for a disaster flick, especially the setup, so we watched it. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you told me it aired on the Sci-Fi Channel. It's definitely not good. It's got all the dumb cliches you'd expect to find. Annoying teens, absurdities, moments that would be tragic if they weren't played for laughs, bad writing, cardboard characters, the works. Still, I've seen worse. Movie number 18 is 1945's Identity Unknown, in which Richard Arlen plays a soldier returning from the Western Front after being injured in an explosion. He was found with the bodies of 3 other soldiers, but because their dog tags were blown off, the army can't decipher who's who, and he doesn't remember anything because he has amnesia. Instead of just waiting for his fingerprint results to ID him, he goes off on his own search, visiting the addresses of each of the 4 men involved in the explosion to try to find his home. In the process, he helps people and touches their lives for the better, which does give the movie a heartwarming quality, but it was also awfully sad at times, most notably the segment with the little boy played by Bobby Driscoll. I also had an issue with the plot. The people he visits all seem to know already that their loved one was killed in action. But if this soldier was one of 4 dead and they don't know yet which one he is, they wouldn't have sent out the death notices already, right? Because hypothetically, one of them would be a mistake, and they'd be causing one family unnecessary grief. So it would be better to wait until after they identify him. I just couldn't stop thinking about this, but it was a decent film and I enjoyed it, even though parts of it were depressing. And finally, movie number 19 is 1952's Don't Bother to Knock. Richard Widmark dawdles in his hotel room after a breakup with the hotel's resident lounge singer, played by Anne Bancroft. A girl across the way catches his eye, and on the rebound, he pays her a visit, only to find the girl is a mentally unstable babysitter played by Marilyn Monroe. This was a surprisingly suspenseful drama. You know right away something's off, so you're nervous about what's coming. You just don't know what exactly that is and when it will strike. The film has solid performances all around. Richard Widmark is always good, as is Anne Bancroft, who I didn't even recognize at first. She's so young here. Elisha Cook Jr. gets a good part where he isn't just playing a creep or someone's henchman. The little girl, Donna Corcoran, does an excellent job, and Marilyn Monroe is amazingly disturbing. I know some people dismiss her as an actress, and yes, it wasn't really her talent that made her so famous, but she did give some worthy, memorable performances during her career. She is an ideal person to play this troubled character, and she pulls off the role surprisingly well, helping make this a solid, unsettling psychological drama. And that's everything! Breaking up the list into 2 parts is definitely preferable when I have this many movies to talk about, so that is something I will keep in mind for the future. This was so much easier to deal with and not nearly as stressful. I hope you enjoyed this video. As usual, there's a list of the movies I discussed in the description. Please feel free to share your thoughts on any of them in the comments below, and I'll be back next time. Happy 4th of July to all my fellow Americans, and to all of you, as always, thanks for watching.